Hello and welcome to Beyond the Lot, where we focus on the business of motor vehicle dealerships. I'm Kevin Timson with Arent Fox Schiff, and I am joined today by an auto industry veteran, someone who I've worked with before, who I know well. I consider a friend as well as a colleague, my good friend JT Taylor. He is from Truist Securities, and he is a managing director of the automotive team there. Good morning and welcome, JT. How are you?
I'm doing great, Kevin. How are you doing this morning?
Good. New York is refusing to exit winter, and we are about to have little teases of spring, occasionally summer coming in. I know you're in South Florida, so I'm sure it's nice and sunny there.
It's pretty much perfect, although it is New York Auto Show week this week, and that's usually the best harbinger of springtime in the city. And it was a great show. We got to see early versions of it last week for the forum and the press days, and very impressive. And it's great what the Greater New York City Auto Dealer Association continues to do to promote auto retail in the world's greatest market.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I had a good opportunity last week to go by as well, look at some of the new models, and it's a great time. And it's always, to me, that always kind of kicks off the season in terms of not only buying vehicles as a consumer, but also just in general in terms of the auto retailing space. So I'm glad that you guys had a chance to come up here. Let's talk a little bit about your background. I know you had an extensive background when it comes to advising dealership groups. And the thing I didn't understand or fully realize was that you've had so much more of an extensive experience, not just in terms of operating dealerships, but you've worked with Southeast Toyota distributors. You've kind of gone on the other side as well, which a lot of folks in our industry don't have that advantage. So tell me a little bit of how that kind of came about.
Well, I actually started on the other side, Kevin. I was going to school solely with the purpose of graduating college and going to work in the automotive industry. I grew up outside of Detroit, just south of Detroit, and always was focused and diligent about tracking the industry and figuring out where am I going to fit in. And eventually, as a young person, I landed at Toyota Motor Sales USA in Torrance, California, after a very nice stint with a couple of suppliers in Detroit. Got recruited and had the blessing of being what turned out to be the third person on the payroll for the Lexus project, which was called Maru F, Channel F. And obviously that dates me somewhat, but it was an incredible experience for a young person. Frankly, all of us were about the same age that recruited into it. There were some more seasoned hands like Jim Perkins and Dave Illingworth and Jan Thompson and Mr. Chitty, Dick Chitty, who covered service. There was just a great level of promise about that. And you got to learn inside out really how the world's largest car company operated, how they think, how they prepare, and then how they execute. It was a great indoctrination. I had the opportunity to work with some folks who were kind of icons in the automotive wholesale business. Bob McCurry nurtured my career along, and he turned me over to Jim Press, who still remains a friend. And it's been a great run. I did the wholesale side of the business for 8 years, left Southern California to come back to the Midwest to be general manager of a Toyota dealership in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I'd gone to school and done a considerable amount of my work as a regional sales manager with Toyota. Got the opportunity to build back up a dealership with a fantastic car dealer, Mike Dever from the Performance Automotive Network. That business has moved on to the second generation and continues to grow. Learned a lot about it. Family situation pushed me to get back into wholesale. Was blessed with the opportunity, as you pointed out, to join JM Family Enterprises and worked with Mr. Moran's team there at Southeast Toyota. then was received the opportunity to get back into retail, and had a great run with the Darrow family. Enjoyed that immensely. Thought I was retired from the car business in 2012, which
No,
was
no one ever retires. No one ever
you,
retires from the
you
car
know that
business.
your clients tell you that you're a member of the cadre now. You will be forever have gasoline in your blood, Kevin. The but it's that kind of I got wooed back in by an opportunity that came my way with Brody Cobb at the Presidio Group. I knew nothing about investment banking and finance,
Yeah.
but he was a patient teacher. We put a great team together, really jacked up the automotive retail investment banking practice there at Presidio. And while that was going on, we spend our summers in the mountains in North Carolina. One of our nearest neighbors there is an old friend of mine from the days when I first started in the car business. I hired him to his first job out of Miami University, but by this time he was the vice chairman of Truist Bank.
Oh, wow.
And he made the call saying, "Hey, we have an investment bank. I'd love for us to do what you're doing at the bank." And Kevin, I have to admit, I said, when if I think of somebody, I'll let you know. And my wife was a little surprised because I love this man. He's an incredible friend and a great leader. His name's Bo Cummins. And I said, "It's not Bo. I just don't want to work for, a 50,000 person bank."
Sure.
But he introduced me to so many really open-minded, hard-working, generous-spirited, purposed teammates at the bank, and found out they're a dealer bank. Truist is depending on the day of measurement, 6th or 7th largest bank in the United States.
Sure.
But with that huge amount of money that we have, promised out in assets, over 10% is automotive.
That makes a lot of sense because the footprint of where they are physically, kind of corresponds to a huge, swath of dealership networks and dealerships and rooftops. I mean, so that makes complete sense.
So I discovered that there was room to grow with a platform like that, great people, and Truist Securities blessed me with an incredible team of real bankers that allowed me to go ahead and continue to do M&A work in a meaningful way, broadened the practice to public companies, other near auto sectors, auto auctions, automotive technology, fincos, and it gave us a purpose there as a linchpin position within the bank as being the subject matter experts for the bank for all things automotive. And it has been a blessing. We have had some great success across the bank in various and different sectors and product lines that are either dealer specific or auto retail specific. We've got a great team, and we continue to perform. You pointed out something very interesting, Kevin. Our footprint is that swath of territory from New England down the eastern coast over to Ohio, and then south into Texas and the southeast. And it is well populated, dealer dense, people dense, buyer dense, and we've got some incredible clients, most of whom are my friends and and acquaintances in the industry. And the Lord's blessed me with the opportunity to be able to have some level of influence. But I have to tell you, with this incredibly resilient business that we're both part of, Kevin, I learn something new every day, and I see someone doing things in a more important way, in a way that makes the future look even better for their business or for their consumers, and it's fun. It's now, you mentioned that that the New York Auto Show kind of kicks off the season. Well, if you meant selling season, we kind of got an early kickoff. The whistle blew from Washington, D.C. this year.
Yeah.
And with the announcement of the potential for tariffs, particularly on new vehicles and on products that go into our vehicles, it became apparent that perhaps those vehicles that were already on the ground may be more of a value to consumers than waiting until June, July, or August, a more traditional selling time.
Yeah.
very big, and the tariffs have definitely accelerated the year. There are a number of prognosticators, though, that look at the year saying, that may not be acceleration, that just may be the pace that we continue. So kind of a polarizing activity right now because we just don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point because right now I talk to so many dealers and they like you're just saying we just don't know what will happen for the rest of the year, let alone for the rest of the month. I mean, and it seems like as I mean, there's been so much change over the past few years. From the time that we had COVID to we survived COVID. We had, and then unexpectedly, or maybe some people expected it too. We had some great years where there was some tremendous earnings, there was some growth, there was the addition of outside investors as well. But we really had some great growth, and all of a sudden we had the challenge of EVs coming in. And then there was the prospect of how do we transition from internal combustion engines to a more EV segment, and then that kind of got put to the side. When the new administration came in, and all of a sudden we're dealing with the impact of tariffs. And how does that shake out in terms of the manufacturers, in terms of the wholesalers and the dealers, obviously onto the consumers, and so it just seems to be such an endless cycle of challenges. Where do you see the market going to, particularly for buy sells? And for financing in general, but if you're a buyer or a seller, what do you tell those folks, in terms of how to prepare for the next few months, let alone the next 12?
Well, let's start with buy sells. Kevin, that's an area of expertise that you have, and you do a fantastic job of shepherding your clients through the process, either whether they're buying or they're selling. So the beneficial or the pitfalls aspects of the process. However, the driver behind dealers selling their business is the same it's been for the past 10 years. And that's because baby boomers own car dealerships, and baby boomers are aging out. And I say it not from the standpoint of lack of capacity or capability, but it's just desire to retire. They've done well. It's been a great run. They're fabulous business people. This current cadre of car dealers, this group of the boomers that do own the stores and are passing them on either to a new owner or to new shareholders, typically members of their family. They have weathered some incredible changes and have profited magnificently. One of the things we like to say at Truist is, and this is where I am. I believe this in my heart. Auto dealers are the fabric of the American entrepreneurial culture. They have this incredible tolerance for risk. They have run very granular local businesses. They have this family feel about how they approach how they staff and how they train and how they take care of their teammates that are in their business. Community minded. Many of them have a great presence of mind to protect the franchise system by being involved at the state level and the legislature and being involved in the lobbies there at the national level even. And frankly, Kevin, I've never met a car dealer that's not a patriot.
Yeah.
They understand one thing that's really, really important, and I think the American public takes this for granted every day. While I have great admiration for these wonderful information and technology giants that are amassing incredible wealth and are making our lives seem to be more focused and simpler if we use it appropriately. Great tools, important things. It's a great time to be alive. But the reality is, my life rolls to me every day. I don't get groceries without trucks. I don't get to work without my car. Sure. Everything, with very few exceptions for people in the United States, involves transportation. And that the incredible beneficial aspect of being born here is we are born with the right to select how we're going to go from point A to point B on a personal level. And it is not likely to change. It is the reason why the automotive retail and automotive commercial businesses will continue to thrive. They're very, very important, not just to our economy, but to just how we conduct ourselves.
Sure.
And when we get, I always have a little pushback when somebody telling me how great another place might be to live. When I say place, another nation. Um, our nation, what's the first thing when a developing country gets in a position where they can do it? Is they build roads.
Yep.
And they want to have it look like the United States. They want their goods and services to be able to move seamlessly from person to person, community to community, state to state, nation to nation. We're the envy from that standpoint of the rest of the world. And that should be supported by franchise. It is supported, by the franchise dealer network. We are big proponents of the franchise system.
Yep. No, those are some really good points. I mean, it's funny you say, people always look towards other places to move to or to visit or this and that. I have a hard time moving off of Long Island because I just like where I am.
Nice.
People want me to move to Florida where you guys are, but no, I think no, I really think your point about the automotive retail space being so ingrained in the American economy and being so essential. I think really it reminds people of the role that auto dealers have to play, despite all the change. And so I think there's always that, like you said, that tremendous optimism, and you're right. I mean, besides some of the changes going on at the surface in terms of whether it's tariffs or COVID or you name it, there's always those longer term trends in the marketplace, like you said, where boomers are exiting, and there are new players coming in. So I guess the question I have for you is who are some of these new players? Because I know. There are some generations, and I know that in your experience as well as in mine, there might, if there is a family business, of which there are many, family businesses in the dealership world, sometimes you're talking to the successor being the second generation, the third generation, in some cases the fourth generation. And some of those generations have different plans, and obviously that's the right. So only a portion of those boomers will be replaced as by some of their family members. And so who comes in and fills the breach? You're talking about younger operators who kind of work through the industry? You're talking about outside investors. Like who are some of these buyers and successors into these businesses?
Well, it's very interesting. We have only 6 public companies, and they're big businesses. They're well funded. They're incredibly well led and managed. They perform usually at the top of the list from all the metrics that are measured by the manufacturers, so they protect their standing with the franchise well. They typically have beautiful facilities, and they're community minded. So there's nothing bad about public ownership in the automotive retail world. Now, that is about 9% of the volume of all the cars and trucks sold at the retail level by franchise dealers. So we've got the rest of the cadre of private enterprises, and there, as you pointed out, there are some established players that are using their historical success to aggregate and continue to consolidate and grow their platforms. We have private platforms that are now that have more than 50, 60, 70, 100 car dealerships.
Sure. We
have then those are your traditional family-owned. Maybe multiple shareholders within the family that are part of that, but that's where they are. And there are a number of those that do an exceptional job. They created an exceptional wealth for their shareholders, but they also do a great job of providing transportation to the consumers when and where they want it. The other part of that is there is institutional capital that has, on a regular basis, since Warburg Pincus invested with Rick Hendrick, almost 30 years ago.
Wow, that's amazing. That's 30 years.
Yeah, and Rick, had incredible foresight, used that to his advantage, and then they parted company, and that's fine. It was a good investment for Warburg Pincus. It was a great investment for Rick, and he took advantage of that and has grown one of the best dealer networks, private dealer networks in the nation. But other institutional capital folks look at this and say, wow, we would love to get into that. Look at the returns. And then here's what happens, Kevin.
Sure.
And I know you're very familiar with this with your work on Wall Street, is the presentation of the investment, let's say a dealer group says, I would love to have private equity buy my business and I'll run it for a period of time and be their senior operator and partner with them, and then they can, well, I'll fully transition later down the road. That's been a common theme. Yeah, I'll talk to them. Let's do it. And what happens is the interest gets created at the private equity level, particularly private equity. The package is put together by the folks that are, spearheading the initiative from the private equity firm. They collect up all the due diligence, and then they present that to their investment committee, which is full of people that are my age. And they say, this is a 3% net to sales business. What are you thinking about? How do you grow this?
Yeah.
You just got to put more capital work, and they get lost in a traditional view, a singular view of it's a grocery store when it's not.
Yeah.
And frankly, private car dealers love that. Banks love that.
Sure.
They're incredibly well financed. Banks love the car business. By the way, there's one investment grade public company, AutoNation. They do a great job of maintaining that status. They've had it for a number of years, and they have been borrowing, of course, at a slightly more aggressive rate, particularly in the bond side of the marketplace.
Sure.
But their competitors don't carry investment grade ratings, but they get investment grade pricing.
Sure.
Because of floor plan.
Yeah.
And because of performance.
Yeah, because the cash flow is steady and steady and steady.
It's staggering.
Yeah.
Staggering. And it's a beautiful business model, one that has been mastered by about today we count about 7,500 owner groups that control 18,000 locations, and those 18,000 locations house 32,000 franchised businesses.
Sure.
And that number goes up and down a few hundred every year. And as long as there's going to be more Americans, that number will typically grow a little bit every year because there's need for new places to buy cars as the population grows in certain markets. We call those open points.
Sure.
And then, but it's about, I think at last count from NADA, 86% of all of those dealers that own car dealerships own 3 or less.
That's the amazing thing is that you think of consolidation, and if you look at any other industry in terms of levels of consolidation, I mean, I know you were talking about tech, a while back, right? And so you think of a search engine, right? You can probably count on your hand the number of dominant search engines that are out there, and then after that, it goes, you get lower and lower and lower until you don't even know who you're talking about in terms of participants. But in the dealership space, that 86% is so significant, and it's not just significant in terms of the way we run the businesses, but also the opportunities for consolidation and the opportunities to go from 1 to 3 rooftops to maybe a group of 10 rooftops to organizing a group of 20, 50, and as you mentioned, up to 100. So how, if you're a buyer and you're looking at this as like you said, I mean, you're not looking at this as a grocery store type opportunity, but you're looking at it from economies to scale. How do you think in terms of that aspect?
Well, that's the reality of the marketplace over the next 10 years, Kevin. Economies of scale will become increasingly important. It's been forecast for 20 years. There were two things, economies of scale from consolidation and technology were going to drive cost out of the retail business and make it easier to operate. The big dealers would be able to afford that easier than the small dealers, and the small dealers would get priced out of the marketplace. Sure. That has started to occur. It's been 30 years in the making, but that has started to occur. And Kevin, I remember when I first got into retail and we were looking at websites and we were looking at CRMs and different things, and we're talking to Reynolds and Reynolds about all these things, and I felt like as an operator, I felt like when it came to choosing technology partners, I felt like I was throwing at a dartboard. But it was 2 a.m. in an Irish pub, and I'd had 7 beers, and I was blindfolded. There was absolutely no way that I felt confident that I was going to hit a bullseye. Well, today it's a little different. Expensive? Absolutely. It is expensive. But there are tools out there that are effectively driving cost out of the process, allowing the best people to do the best job, make the best living from a reward standpoint, and deliver a consumer experience that wasn't even thought of 30 years ago. It's amazing how this now has attracted another form of institutional capital, and we call that the family office. Family office, the number one differential between a private equity firm and a family office is permanent capital. The approach is I'm going to buy something and I'm going to keep it until there's something better for me to do with it.
Sure.
And there's no time horizon placed upon that investment. And typically the number of people that are approving that investment is very narrow and short, and they get in the business. We have a client who's a family office, and they own a couple of very large platforms here in the United States. Frankly, if you combine those two platforms, they'd be the fourth largest dealer group in the U.S. And it's one family that owns it. And but they run them completely separate. They are incredibly community-minded people at the local level with those dealerships, but it's two separate businesses. And they looked at them for exactly what you just said. Hey, there's there are some apples and oranges in there. They all do the same thing, but they have different factors that they have to approach in their marketplace. Frankly, doing business in Florida is a lot different than doing business in Louisiana.
Sure.
And we all know that, and God bless the dealers in your hometown up in Long Island, some of the best retailers in the country, but some of the most demanding consumers in the country as well.
Demanding consumers and demanding regulatory environment as well. But
touch on that. Talk about that. That's a big deal right now, and you touch it a lot. So how do you feel about the regulatory environment and where we are today?
Well, I think the regulatory environment, we are saved by the dealer associations that came about, so many years ago, and that really set the ecosystem in place that really work, for the dealerships, that work in partnership with, the state governments and all the agencies there. I think those are the necessary go-betweens, that really kind of serve as a buffer in terms of coming up with realistic regulatory requirements, right? We all obviously we all have this big sandbox here, right? We all want to be able to play in the sandbox. Everyone wants to play nicely. You have the dealers, you have the manufacturers, and so the glue that kind of makes everything work, I think, are the associations, both in terms of the manufacturers as well as the dealerships, and we all are stakeholders in that game, right? And so it's not necessarily are we pro-regulation or are we anti-regulation, because depending upon what situation you're in, you're going to have a regulation save you as a player or work against you, right? And so it's a matter of balance. It's always a matter of finding what's the right balance, what's realistic, and even at the federal level. One of the things we talked about 2024 of being the year of the EV, and obviously there was some pushback from the administration's goals, the prior administration's goals, and because what you had mentioned before is the notion of having a vehicle and having that freedom and getting up and going. We're not quite there yet when it comes to EVs. Maybe with plug-in hybrids, but certainly battery EVs. We're not there in terms of the range, and so there was a little bit of a disconnect there. But I think like everything, the market works itself out, with government requirements and with all the stakeholders. So definitely, no, but that's a really good point.
And and the regulatory environment is something that dealers have to deal with on a increasing level of attention. The pitfalls and the penalties have gotten to be fairly extraordinary for these businesses. And that's another reason of consolidation. So when you have a dealer who is maybe, playing the back nine of life, had some great success, and he's listening to the dealer association, or he's listening to a state rep, or he's, watching what's going on at the federal level, and he understands that, oh my goodness, it's likely to be more complex and sophisticated, and I'm going to have to make investments in tools and people in order to make sure that I'm doing this according to these regulations, it gets more expensive.
Sure.
And if I'm a big dealer, it's just the cost of doing business. And by the way, don't misinterpret that. Cost of doing business doesn't mean lower profits. Cost of doing business means that consumer pays more.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing I was amazed about. I remember in the salad days of COVID buying a vehicle from a client and having to pay above MSRP, which was amazing to me. I thought I had an in, but apparently not. So, but no, I think this is it's an amazing industry that we're in, and that's, I think, to your point, it kind of keeps things fun, kind of keeps things interesting, and I think you've made so many good points here, JT. Are there any are there any things that you want to leave some of our listeners to in terms of thinking about the state of the auto market and kind of where they can go from here?
Two things. Number one, to sellers, the value of your business has not diminished due to what's going on in Washington and globally with trade wars. The value of your business will continue to be what it is because of the branch you represent, the number of people that are in your marketplace, and how prepared you are to deliver the goods and services that you've been delivering typically for decades. Keep going. And if you're ready to sell, prepare the business for sale. You need to step in with advisors like Kevin in order to take those first few steps. And I highly recommend Kevin at the front end of your decision, whether that's going to be in the next 6 months or the next 6 years. He will lean in and give you some great advice. Also, when you're considering a sale, your accountant, and make sure that it's a dealer accountant, somebody that's done a few transactions, if not that's solely in dealer transactions. Then also an advisor, whether it be an investment bank like Truist Securities or a broker that you trust, and there are some that even we would trust. I would say that you need somebody to get you set up and lead you through the process once you make the decision to go. Buyers, it's gotten to the place where you need the same thing. If you are actively seeking to grow your business, consult with your counsel, your accountants, and an advisor as to what strategy might fit best for your efforts. Don't do it alone. Yeah, you may end up paying a few fees, you may get a couple of hourlies that come your way. It's worth it because the ability to maximize your hard-earned capital in a great transaction is going to be simpler and more effective and more likely if you do choose to bring these advisors in on the front end of your thoughts. It's a strategy. And consolidation is going to be a real thing. Those costs of doing business are real. Scale is going to be much more important in the next 10 years than it's ever been in our business. And it's probably time to give consideration as to where you are with that. It's difficult to be in a hold position today because that's typically going to have a terminal position. You will reach that either I got to grow or I got to go decision sooner or later. It's better to prepare for it today, particularly in when people are looking around and really not knowing what they're doing. The one thing I'm disappointed about 2025, Kevin, is we started the year with the likelihood of a high degree of predictability.
Sure.
Interest rates were likely to remain flat. Okay, I know where they are. Pricing was coming down somewhat. I know where it is. Used cars were even though there was going to be a shortage of used cars, it was likely to be flat pricing. I could predict. I knew where my expenses were going to be. I knew where my market opportunity could be, and I could prepare. As opposed to the 5 previous years where I was up and down as you pointed out, sometimes on a weekly basis. Well, we're back to that. And by the way, folks, it's not nearly as real as what you went through in COVID. This is a false front. And keep your focus. You are incredibly important, car dealers, to what we do every day as Americans. And we all thank you. But as you prepare for the future, make sure you get people around you that are experienced and can help you go through that.
JT, well said. Thank you for the participation here today. I think this was a great session, and you are, obviously the first of my Beyond the Lot sessions, and so I really appreciate you being the guinea pig. You did a great job.
Thanks. And
And
likewise, Kevin. It's appreciate the friendship and of course always the professional attitude you have towards our clients. Thank you.
thank you. And I think we're done here with Beyond the Lot, and we will see you again.
You got it. Thanks, Kevin.